Welcome to another episode of Sensational She-Geek, live from Yancy Street. My name is Anna, I am the Sensational She-Geek, and this is episode 2.5. I'll be talking about comics culture and comics culture. This week's episode, I have a couple of topics laid out to discuss, and that is WandaVision episode 4, upcoming comics and comic news, spotlights on representation for comics that are coming out this week, starting tomorrow, the 2nd of February, and going into the 3rd. I'm going to talk a little bit about the X vote that's going around right now on the internet and causing a bit of a ruckus, and then a few words on Snowpiercer, the TNT TV show, which is based off of a French comic that comes out in 3 volumes for English from Titan Comics. As usual, I do appreciate listeners' patience as I get into the swing of things in this big wide world of podcasts. This is my 4th episode. I am calling it episode 2.5, and that is because I've decided that while I'm doing 2 episodes per week on Fridays for reviews of the new comic books that had come out, and for Mondays of just more comics culture things, I decided that I will kind of just call them half episodes. And until I decide otherwise, that's what we're going to go with. And I suppose you could call this week 2 episode 2, so it's 2.5. It works. Without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the biggest topic of the week. Of course, that is WandaVision episode 4. Now, I remembered last week I had some theories, and I had some things that I was pretty certain was going to happen. My theories, of course, have been proven wrong. Although not necessarily proven wrong, I guess there was a bit of truth to them. Trying to give myself some credit here. And I remember I also had reported that there are 3 more episodes of the sitcom style episodes, going on with Wanda and Vision. And I had kind of assumed that we would be getting those 3 as episodes 4, 5, and 6 out of the 9 episodes. As we saw, 1, 2, and 3 were all sitcom episodes. They announced there would be 3 more, and we all just kind of assumed it was going to be 4, 5, and 6, and we're all just looking real stupid now. Of course they weren't going to do it that way. That's too obvious. We had the first non-sitcom episode was episode 4, which was very exciting because for the people who weren't really sure what was going on, they're starting to get to see a lot more of that big picture. And the spoilers, of course, so don't listen to this if you're planning on watching the unspoiled episode 4 still. Spoilers, of course, this is all Wanda. Everything we're seeing in WandaVision, the dome around the neighborhood and everything, no one's doing this to her. It's all Wanda. I know I previously had said that I thought maybe there was some former Hydra person who was coming in under AIM because of the Beekeeper and yada yada yada, but they went through and they explained all of that in this episode 4. And it's not deeper than we thought, but it's possibly more intense than we thought. Of course, this is most likely the closest thing that we're going to get to a live-action representation of House of M, which is, of course, the comic series where Wanda redoes the world and starts the world where mutants are top of the food chain and humans are less than. And there's lots of things that you find out, like Peter Parker is telling everybody he's a mutant, but he's not really. And then you get Captain Marvel, who was Carol Danvers, who at the time was going by Warbird before Civil War. And she was the most famous mutant in the world during House of M. It's just little things that want to change. And of course, at the end of it, when her brother and her father find out that she's doing this really on their behalf without asking them and going over it with them, and just kind of did all of this for them as a family without even seeing if this was okay with them, they are of course enraged, and Wanda, in her being distraught, says no more mutants, and something like 90% of the world's mutant population loses their powers. So we're starting to see that this is actually kind of on a similar level to that. There was a few very shocking moments in the series. We kind of already knew that Geraldine, as she was called, who was Monica Rambeau, of course, had been, excommunicated from the neighborhood. She'd been kicked out, and we knew that was by Wanda, but we didn't really see it happen. In this episode, we do see that happen, and it's, whew, man, if Wanda looked at me like the way she looked at Geraldine / Monica, oh man, I think I would crap myself. That's something that the team here is doing really, really well, is getting her character to be that fine line of intensely disturbed very smart, very mad, and not willing to kind of let anybody question this reality she's made. So that's very cool. And of course, the biggest shock of the episode was discovering that this is not some idealized version of Vision's body that she's brought back and done things with. He's a corpse. She's just put his brain, let's actually rephrase that, she's put his personality back into his corpse. So when she looks at it without all of her Wanda magic stuff going on, it's you know, grayed out Vision, like a person with all the blood taken out of their body, and he's got that massive hole in his head where Thanos ripped out the stone from his head. That shit is nuts. And she looks and she goes, oh, and she redoes the magic and she looks back and he's perfect Vision the way she wants him to be. Oh my god, woman, you are sleeping with a dead man. He's not even a human, but let's not go into that. He's a dead robot. I don't even know, is that worse than a dead person? Probably not, but still, it's really, really messed up. So Wanda's clearly lost it. Not to the point where things are gonna really start going bad for everybody else, but we're getting there fast. That was extremely exciting and great payoff of the people who've been sitting behind the scenes going, when are we gonna see what's really happening under all of Wanda's magic? And we saw that, and that was nuts. Oh my gosh. A little bit horrifying. Right there up on the level with the Iron Man zombie scene from Spider-Man 2, which I just rewatched the other day. Holds up really well, by the way, in case you're wondering. That scene, the scene with Vision and the scene with Iron Man, same level of kind of a shocking, I did not expect for there to be a dead person in this. Moving on from that aspect of the show, though, we saw Monica! It's so exciting. Of course, we saw Monica before, but now we saw Monica as Monica! And what a way to introduce her! This was one of the most unsettling scenes I've probably seen in television in a while, was Monica returning from her being gone for 5 years after the big blip. The blip is what they call it in Spider-Man. I don't know what the dusting? Let's just call it the blip. It's easy. They explain, we see what happened when she was blipped, when she was snapped. She was in the hospital with her mother who had cancer, or it's something, and it's been 5 years, so she pops back into the hospital. The way they do it is so bizarre. It's like, when we saw everybody get snapped, their ashes disintegrated. This was the opposite. It was weird and creepy and unsettling. I keep saying unsettling, but that really is the perfect word for what it was. And of course, it's been 5 years. She doesn't know it's been 5 years. She runs out to the hallway, finds the doctor, who is shocked of what's going on. The hospital is in chaos. I'm so glad we're seeing the chaos of the let's see, that would be post Bruce's snap, right? In Endgame, when Bruce brought everybody back, you suddenly have half the population has returned. What are you gonna do with all these people? And in this hospital, you see a lot of that chaos going on. So that was a really, really awesome payoff. And of course, the doctor has to tell Monica that her mother actually did survive this incident where she left her in the hospital 5 years ago. She died 2 years after that. And so Monica learns of her disappearance and returns to work with S.W.O.R.D., which is, of course, one of the big holdouts. People have been very excited to have that officially confirmed by name verbally. So we got that down. And we got Jimmy Woo. I was very excited to see Jimmy Woo. He's very different right now in live action MCU stuff than he is in the comics. He's an older character in the comics. He's been around for decades now. He was the lead member / Professor X of the Agents of Atlas, the original Agents of Atlas. And more recently in comics, he started up the new Agents of Atlas, which is the first all-Asian superhero team. You get some heroes like Silk, Brawn, who was formerly Totally Awesome Hulk, whatever he called himself. I think it was just Hulk. He's Brawn now. You get Shang-Chi, Wave, who was the first Filipino superhero, Arrow, who was a Chinese superhero, and some other ones who are really cool. But anyway, we get Jimmy Woo in WandaVision this week. We last saw him in Ant-Man 2, I believe, where he is trying to learn a card trick from Scott Lang. And guess what? He learns the card trick and he shows Monica, and she's not impressed, but, you know, she's she's a big girl, she wouldn't be. But it's so nice having him as a character again. I remember some time ago I was theorizing that he would be in it, but there wasn't really anything confirmed as far as I know until just before the episode actually came out. Another character who we got to see who was from older MCU stuff, other MCU stuff, was Darcy. Darcy was from Thor. She was a friend of Jane Foster's. At the time, she was a poli-sci major, just kind of hanging out, getting to know things, you know, doing whatever it is that she was doing, being funny. And now she's back, and she has been recruited by SWORD because she was some kind of space doctorate. What a switch, Darcy. Good for you. You went from a poli-sci major to having a doctorate in some kind of crazy space field. I think it's safe to say that the events of the Thor movies she appeared in had an effect on her. I'm also really excited to see her, hopefully, of course, in Thor Love and Thunder, which they are currently filming, actually, in Australia. Jimmy Woo, again, there's been a lot of people who want to see him have a Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. type series that he stars in, and all I gotta say about that is, please, if you do that, have him be rounding up the Asian superheroes to make his new Agents of Atlas team. That would be so cool. There's a lot of great people you can tap into there. A lot of great characters. You've already got Shang-Chi coming in the movies later this year. It's just all around. It sounds like it would be a great idea, and I really, really wish that Disney/Marvel would do that if they make that show. It seems like the obvious thing to do. So some theories that I have right now, based on everything we saw in that episode. There's hella Skrulls running around everywhere at SWORD. You gotta know that. We know now that Secret Invasion is actually going to be a thing we're going to get in a few years. Secret Invasion being the big one of Brian Michael Bendis' big events from Marvel in the 2000s, which was you are revealed that many, many superheroes and even more humans, especially those in positions of power, have been replaced by Skrulls who can shapeshift into anything, which includes the memories, I think, and the powers, at least. And I could theorize which SWORD members it is that are going to be Skrulls. It just makes sense to have that tie. It's going to be like how Hydra infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. Skrulls are going to infiltrate all of Earth. We're going to find out that they've been Skrulls this whole time. We're going to find that out later on. I'm really looking forward to that paying off. My theory right now, I think the director of SWORD is probably a Skrull. It's the most obvious way to go. There's also been some screenshots people have put up online where there's a few scenes where everybody in the room looks shocked except for one person. And so I'm wondering if that one person is a Skrull or if they just had this one guy smiling when everybody else looks shocked because it's funny. Other things is, last week I had a theory about one of the neighbors potentially being Clea. While that theory wasn't really proved bunk, it's looking a lot less likely that she is going to be anybody relevant, as they did go through the real identities, by they I mean SWORD did go through the real identities of the people in the neighborhood, their real world lives and who they are. It did not make it to that garden party. They went on to something else before that. So it could still be a possibility that she's someone relevant, including Clea, but it's looking less and less likely. With three sitcom episodes left, we have episodes 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. That's 5 episodes, and 3 of those we know are going to be sitcoms. So I'm going to make a guess that this next episode is going to be a sitcom episode, leaving us with 2 more on 4 episodes. I think it's a pretty big likelihood that we're going to get a sitcom episode for the last episode. Most definitely the second to last. I can almost guarantee the second to last episode will be a sitcom episode, if not the final episode as well. It just kind of seems like the kind of thing Marvel's Disney would do to us, knowing the fans that we are. And also, speaking about Monica again, we are unsure yet if she has her powers or if she is pre-powered Monica. I was wondering maybe for a minute in the show if perhaps her seeing the dome around the neighborhood was signifying that she had the powers, because when Wu walked up to it, it looked like he maybe didn't see it, and she did, and that's kind of part of her thing, is seeing the different electromagnetic spectrums of various types of light and whatnot. I don't know, that might be a stretch, but we'll see. I think if she doesn't have her powers already, we'll be seeing Monica Rambeau get powered by the end of this season, by the end of episode 9 for sure. And I think that covers all of everything I wanted to talk about for WandaVision. We had some fun things, we had some exciting things, we had some very, very disturbing things, and we had a little bit of unsettling stuff. So this show is really proving to be exactly what it was marketed to be, and pretty much exactly what comic book readers like myself were hoping that it would end up being. I just want to briefly go over now some of the comics that will be coming out this week. It is the 1st of February, and tomorrow the 2nd is the new DC Day, and Wednesday the 3rd is New Comic Book Day for all the other publishers. There's a good deal of independent publishers putting out #1 issues this week, so I kind of wanted to go over a few of those. One here we have is Maniac of New York, coming from Aftershock Comics. It's about an unstoppable, invincible serial killer who stalks the street of New York, and with no other options, the authorities choose to ignore him and just let the people of the city adapt and survive on their own, and then until we get 2 women who unite against this enemy. So it'll be interesting seeing what kind of characters those bring up. Another one is Chained to the Grave, #1. Solicitation says Outlaw Roy Mason has come back from the dead in search of treasure chained to the headstone that marked his grave. Sounds a little bit like a horror comic that's from IDW. From Image is Deep Beyond #1. The solicitation of that says, fearing catastrophe, what remains of mankind seeks to discover what is hidden in the depths of the abyss. And that is one that has Mirka Andolfo as a co-creator on the series, so that's for any fans of her. Encoded #1 from Devil's Due Publishing. In the future, humanity safeguards the threat to an AI rebellion by activating something called the Analog Protocol, but somewhere a piece of Aurelius's awareness, whoever that is, remains in the mind of a hemp farmer. So it sounds like some kind of futuristic dystopian stuff. I shouldn't say crap. Fear Case #1 is about a Secret Service agent who they're investigating the Fear Case, which is an actual box that appears throughout history at sites of tragedy that must be passed on within 3 days or the possessor will face deadly consequences. Again, another one from Boom, we have Luna #1. This is a Maria Lovett series. Maria Lovett was the artist for Brian Azzarello's Faithless and Faithless 2. She's done her own creator-owned projects from Boom before and other publishers. I highly recommend if you're into slightly creepy, sensual, but at the same time somewhat demonic stories, this is definitely something you'll probably want to pick up. It says, a woman learns about the truth about the family of the sun, which is a cult, blood rituals, drugs, and sex, while she is forced to confront the dark secrets behind her dreams. And of course, this is intended for mature readers. One of the ones that I'm really looking forward to is Sonya Versal #1. That is a Dynamite comic that is going to be the introduction of multiple Sonyas across alternate dimensions. Guys, this is Spider-Verse for Red Sonya. I feel like this is something I can't pass up. There's actually more, too. Let's see a few more of that. We're going to have the Vampirella Valentine's Day special I was not planning on getting, but then it turns out that it's an alternate reality story where Vampirella has married Dracula and the two of them rule over Earth with a dark thumb. That shit rocks, and I will definitely be picking it up if my comic shop has it. I think that actually covers everything I wanted to go over for the indie #1s. We also have a couple of future state comics that are coming out this week. I'm looking forward to, personally, the next Batman #3. That is a John Ridley written story featuring Tim Fox's Batman. We left off at the last one at a very tense moment where the magistrate is... Really, Batman is between the magistrate and a couple who murdered somebody who murdered their daughter. So it's a little justifiable. It's a very complex thing, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they kind of fix that whole situation. And then, more exciting than that is Future State Wonder Woman #2 by Joelle Jones, with Jordi Belair just doing colors. This is a 2-issue series, but by God, it is a damn work of art. Every inch of the pages are luscious. Every scrap of story means something. It's such a well thought out series. I really can't say enough about Joelle Jones as an artist and a writer. She puts out incredible work. And if you haven't read some of her work before, definitely do that. She's done some stuff for DC as well as For, I believe, Dark Horse is where she did Lady Killer, which is a series about a 1950s housewife who moonlights as a killer for hire. How can you go wrong? Definitely check that out. Speaking of Future State, though, there was an announcement in the past, well, it was really an interview that came out today to fully explain the announcement they put out some time ago about Infinite Frontier number 0. As it sort of now seems, Infinite Frontier is the new era of DC. We know we had Rebirth, and then before that they had New 52. Well, Infinite Frontier is just another title for another era of DC Comics. So Infinite Frontier number 0 is going to be coming out, I believe it said March 3rd. The final date to order this from your comic shop, I think, is this coming Sunday, so make sure you do that in this first week of February while you still can if you are looking to get this comic. I'm sure most shops will buy it anyway, but you know it's better safe than sorry. The thing about Infinite Frontier, it would appear that the questions we've been having about what is it in Future State that's gonna stick versus what is something that's just doesn't actually really matter for the future of comics. And I'm sorry if you hear scratching in the background. That is my cat using the litter box. Oh, she's kind of having a moment right now. It seems that Infinite Frontier is the answer to those questions, and the answer to those questions is they're just kind of, picking up what they wanted to keep and dropping the rest, which sort of sucks. Future State, they put out all these different fingers, and they put out all the different, they're calling them the multiple possible futures of the DC universe, but they're only keeping some of it. Which kind of feels like a lot of it, then the rest of it is just being left for no reason, just kind of float in the middle of nowhere. There's a lot of people who are eating up this whole New Frontiers, or this Infinite Frontier thing as a new genius move for DC, resetting all of the DC universe to be on the same page, and blah, blah, blah. Well, what they're really doing is they're just doing the thing that the other of the big, quote, big two does, Marvel, and they're just making it so that things can be connected or they don't have to be. It's just comics. It's not anything new. It's new for DC in that they're just bringing their continuity kind of full circle. Some things that they've announced, some of the ongoing series and limited series that are coming after Infinite Frontier, or I guess for Infinite Frontier, starting in March. Some of the things I'm pretty excited for, and some of the things I'm less excited for. Infinite Frontier number 0 itself will contain short kickoff stories for many of those ongoing and many of those ongoing and mini-series for Infinite Frontier, the time period, I guess, era. And then one of those, most notably to my opinion, would include Joelle Jones's Yara Flor coming into her own as an Amazon. That will be a kickoff story for the future of Yara Flor becoming Wonder Girl, which I have been waiting for that announcement officially. So exciting. The thing about that, though, is that shit's gonna be better than any of this other Infinite Frontier stuff. I gotta keep saying New Frontier. I gotta stop saying New Frontiers. Jesus. The reason that I think that's gonna be so superior to all the other Infinite Frontier projects is they have yet to announce when that series by Joelle Jones will be starting. They are giving her all the time she needs. Last time that happened, and she was at DC, we got this 2-issue miniseries, which, newsflash, is completely phenomenal. I am so excited for Joelle Jones being allowed to take the time that she needs to make Yara Flor the character that she deserves to be. That's really out of my Infinite Frontiers take. Those are my two takes. Is one, they're just kind of writing off all of this Future State stuff they just did. Not all of it, this is stuff that's not continuing, they're just kind of writing off. And the other one is Yara Flor hasn't been announced as to when she's coming out, but she is coming, and it's gonna rock your world. The only other comics news that I have is actually brand new news, and that is that Ryan Coogler is now going to be working on a World of Wakanda series. Specifically, it's his production company has been extended a deal with Disney to include a TV series based on the Kingdom of Wakanda. There's not a whole lot of details at the time, but that was something that was just announced through some news outlet or another, and it is legitimate news. There will be a Wakanda TV show done under the thumb of Ryan Coogler's production company. We're not sure what it's about yet, but it is breaking news, and in the legacy of Chadwick Boseman, I think this is probably going to be an excellent project for them to work on and to expand the world of African superheroes. Because why not? We need more of that. Representation is everything. And speaking of representation now, I will go over my spotlights of representation. I did 4 this week because I had 4 to talk about. Why not? So we'll kind of go over those quickly here. These are all coming out either tomorrow, the 2nd of February, or Wednesday, the 3rd. Now, the first one I've kind of touched on already is Maria Levet's Luna. Now, I apologize if her last name is Yvette and I'm pronouncing that wrong. That would be terribly embarrassing. But the series is Luna. It's going to follow this young girl, this young woman, as she joins a cult and discovers it's a hippie cult, and she thinks it's going to be one thing and discovers that it's something much darker than that. And she herself has some secrets to unfold. This is a series that I'm really excited for because Maria Levet is a big proponent of queer characters in comics. If you read her art, if you saw her artwork for Brian Azzarello's Faithless and Faithless 2, you will definitely understand that she likes to put all kinds of people and all kinds of relationships in her comics, in her artwork. I definitely expect that to continue into Luna. Already from the few covers that we have, the imagery is definitely among that dark sensuality thing that Faithless was following as well. I don't think the series is going to be too close to Faithless because the setting is dramatically different. It's even a different time period. This is the 1960s. But I think you should know that Maria Levet's art is kind of in the vein of Frank Miller, Raphael Grampa, Frank Quitely, Trad Moore, whoever it was who did Wonder Woman Dead Earth. They just finished that one. Daniel Warren Johnson. That none of those artists are necessarily similar to one another, but they're not similar in style, but they're similar in the fact that they're unusual art styles they tend to be paired with a story that matches the art style, if that makes sense. Her art is not what you would call perfect. It's a very almost scrawly, thinly inked and lightly colored artwork. It's hard to describe unusual art such as hers, but it tends to fit anything that she puts it to the T. Faith and Faithless, Faithless and Faithless 2, I can't really praise enough. It's a very dark series, very, very much not for kids, but I'm excited to see what Maria Levet has by way for us in Luna, whether that is just the dark sensuality, whether we get a lot of queer topics in that, whether we go into religion or not. I'm just excited to have a fully female creator-owned series again to follow. And on that same note, I already mentioned Joelle Jones is doing the writing and art of her Future State Wonder Woman #2 finale this week. As I said, she's going to have more Yara Flor for us later in 2021, I hope, but for now, this is a absolute gorgeous piece of work that she's been putting out. She's one of the most talented creators in comics probably ever, if I'm to be honest. If you've read her work, as I mentioned earlier, Lady Killer, some things that she's done for Batman, Catwoman, her art is stellar and incomparable, and her storytelling is well thought out and creative, and I'm so glad, I know I already said this, but I'm so glad DC is giving her the time that she needs to finish that Yara Flor Wonder Girl series to the way that she wants it to be finished. And so that is 2 female owned, while DC isn't do creator owned stuff, but it is written and drawn by women. You get Joelle Jones for Future State Wonder Woman, and you get Maria Levet for Luna at Boom. Moving beyond that, we have 2 comics also that are both written by creators of color and star characters of color. Those 2 comics are both Future State, or excuse me, one is Future State and one is Far Sector number 10. The Future State comic is, of course, John Ridley's The Next Batman, starring Tim Fox. Some notes about Far Sector. We most recently saw Joel Mullen in actually Future State. We saw her in the Future State Justice League issue number 1 a few weeks ago, and it was revealed there that she, apparently, was the one to save the Green Lantern Corps in their final hour. Now, I believe right now in DC there's some hullabaloo with the Corps where the battery's been destroyed or something like that, the main battery, central battery. And Joe's ring is meant to be, it's meant to self-charge, because they gave it to her to see what would happen if they give a Green Lantern ring to somebody who did not overcome great fear, but who instead continues to live despite living in great fear. It's a great theory. I've gone on about this in a lot of blog posts about how great that idea really is. It's exciting that she is a character at the center of this big change we're hopefully about to get for the Green Lanterns, and I really, really, really would love to see her continue into whatever is in Infinite Frontier and beyond after that. And that, of course, is Far Sector is a comic book created by N.K. Jemisin and Jamal Campbell, and those are 2 Black American creators in comics and novels. And John Ridley, as we all know by now, is the Oscar-winning writer for 10 Years a Slave, and his voice as a black man comes through clearly, very clearly in this second issue, the last issue of The Next Batman. He writes Tim Fox as a Batman who is entirely different than Bruce Wayne. Now, Bruce Wayne has never had to face the things Tim Fox has faced. Bruce Wayne being a billionaire white man, he really hasn't had a lot of troubles in his life. Even when he does lose, he's usually not the person who ends up suffering for that loss. There's a plethora of examples to look from, but with Tim, he seems to be much more proper ground level superhero. He is in touch with the people in a way that Bruce never could be. And the language that John Ridley uses in the narration of Tim is definitely not something we would see Bruce Wayne ever saying. So it's a really nice depiction of a black superhero in comics, and I'm excited for John Ridley's series coming in Infinite Frontiers. After Infinite Frontiers number 0, it will be the Second Son, Next Batman Second Son, I believe is what it's called. But that'll be really fun to let him continue. It's a mini series still, but it's another 4 issues with Tim Fox coming up to being Batman, it sounds like. And finally, for my spotlights on representation, I talked a little bit about queer characters in this week's comic releases. We have Luna as an assumption, but Luna was most likely a queer character. Red Sonja is legendary as queer, as well as Vampirella, her Dynamite sister. Kate Pryde was just revealed officially, finally, as being bisexual. It's something that was in the works for decades, that Chris Claremont wanted to enact for her character and never really got the chance due to a lot of reasons. There are several X Factor members who are queer, including, of course, Northstar and his husband Kyle. And then we have Prodigy and Dakin, and in a way, Dakin is hella queer. And then we have Jo Mullein, Green Lantern. She is definitely, I would say, pansexual, because she's had sex with aliens as well as men and women, or at least wants to. And finally, who I would like to talk about a little bit more here, we have the new Valkyrie from Return of the Valkyries. She is a character who is based off of, as far as I can tell, Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie from the MCU, who we saw in Thor Ragnarok, and then again in Avengers Endgame. She is, of course, a black Valkyrie with a white suit, and I think it's safe to say that her gray suit she wore when we first met her in Thor Ragnarok is what this Valkyrie in Return of the Valkyries outfit and whole look is based on. None of that has really been confirmed as far as I know, but it's a pretty solid theory if you ask me. It was revealed through the narration of this new Valkyrie that she was one of the original Valkyries. I can't pronounce the word of the group. It's like Valkyrior. I feel like I'm saying it wrong. But this group of Valkyries, she was one of the first. And as we know from Brunhilde, who is the Valkyrie who died during War of the Realms, who everyone just kind of calls Valkyrie, the original, so we say, I think she's older than Brunhilde. I think she came before her, or at least was part of that group of Valkyries who fought alongside her. They were the originals, and now Jane Foster, with the help of her handy-dandy Pegasus horse, whose name I forget, she has rescued, kind of accidentally, this lost Valkyrie. It'll be really interesting. We have 2 more Valkyries who are going to be popping up. There is going to be the large blonde one, whose name I forget at the moment, and then the return of Brunhilde. There's always jokes through the ages about Valkyries all being lesbians because they're a group of warring women, similar to the Amazons, how their jokes are all that they're lesbians. Okay. But I'm actually very interested to see how they handle the sexuality of multiple Valkyries. Jane Foster has never really strayed from being a straight woman as far as I can tell. This new Valkyrie is definitely a lesbian. The third Valkyrie who's going to pop up, who is the larger woman, I can't recall her name. Not sure what she is, but Brunhilde is definitely bisexual as well. So I'm interested to see if the Valkyries are going to be, if their sexuality is going to be a big part of Brunhilde's return and of this new Valkyrie. They've made it a big part of her. It's the first thing that you learn when you learn about her, is that she lost her lover in that battle that the Valkyries were fighting way back in the day. So I'm very interested to see kind of how that pans out as a series, and there's going to be another series after King in Black. I think it's called Rise of the Valkyries, so keep an eye out for that starting in March or April. Stepping away from spotlights on representation, next up I want to talk about this X-Men vote. It's been a bit of a ruckus online. There's been some arguments, there's been some things said, some relationships damaged. People are taking this very seriously. Now, the X-Men vote, in case you're unfamiliar, Jonathan Hickman, head of X, has decided that in the comics, the X-Men are going to be voting on who their new X-Men, or excuse me, the mutants are going to be voting on who their new X-Men members will be. So to make it a little bit fun, they decided to throw us, the fans, one slot, the final slot of the team. Thank God it's just one, because the chaos that's come out of this is insane. It started as a really fun, fan-involved minor X-Men thing, and the characters who they have listed to be voted on to take this final slot are Armor, Banshee, Boom Boom, Cannonball, Forge, Marrow, and Polaris, Strong Ice, Sunspot, and Tempo. It's a bunch there. The drama kind of seemed to start with people being concerned that their favorite character is going to be taken from one book and put in a different book and therefore not get as much attention. I feel like that's a big assumption to make, and also is a very release the Snyder Cut vibe, fans being weird and demanding that the publisher doesn't go in the direction that they're going, and therefore they listen to the fans because what the fans want is king. It's a very odd, toxic ideal these people seem to have. I personally think that the decision's already been made. I don't think that they're actually going to leave something. I don't think Jonathan Hickman would leave something like this up to chance. My personal voting guide, here you go. My pick was Armor for Asian representation on the team, and bringing in a cool, slightly younger character to develop more and work on more relationships with her. I guess you can vote for Polaris if you want to see her possibly interact with her father more. I'd bet money that Magneto's going to be on the team. I don't really hate Boom Boom, but I don't get why people are so obsessed with her. She is a really bad version of Australian Dazzler who has no positive aspects that I can find. Forge, if you want to vote for Native American representation, he's a guy who can make killer gear. Or strong guy, in the words of a comic series interior artist, to fuck with the X-Men artists who have to fit him in all of the panels, because he's a big dude. But real talk, again, like I said, I think it's already been decided. Thinking the way I think Jonathan Hickman does, some characters at the very least are off the table. Armor is in Sword, so she probably won't be leaving, and Polaris is in X Factor, so that's the same. I'd probably say the same about Boom Boom, Cannonball, Forge, and Sunspot, who are all in their own books between X-Force and New Mutants and New Mutants. Additionally, I don't think Hickman would be okay with splitting up characters like Bobby and Sam. He's got a pretty good dynamic between them figured out for years now. He worked with them in Avengers. He's known them for a long time. I don't think he would do that. And I don't think Sam would leave his wife and small child portals to Krakoa that can take you instantaneously or not. I don't think his wife would be okay with that. To be honest, I'm not sure who Tempo is. I don't think I've ever seen this character before. Sorry. My take is that it's going to be either Marrow, Strong Guy, or Banshee. Marrow, because it would be an off-kilter, mildly horrific character, just based on her appearance. She's terrifying. Strong Guy to try and redeem a character known as Child Murderer, because if you recall, he did kill Wolfsbane's child, her son. And Banshee because his daughter Siren is currently going through some stuff, and maybe he'll want to be on top of the situation and get some, fatherly knowledge in on this stuff, protect his daughter, something like that. I don't think anything that's going to happen based on this X-Men vote is going to be taking away anything from characters. I think whatever character that they're planning on putting in, if they are taking it from a book that they're already in, they're going to make sure that they're equally represented in this new X-Men book, because why would they have us vote on a character who's not actually going to be involved? Or at least vote for a character who wouldn't be involved then. But once again, I think they've already made the decision and are just really pandering to the fans wanting to be involved. But it's fine, it's fun. I just think people are taking it too seriously. If you're getting worked up about this, and if you're being told mean things about this, then you just take a break, sit back on the computer. It's not that big of a deal. If, one character gets reassigned to a different comic book. It's comics, we can handle this. For my final segment, I recently binged Snowpiercer Season 1 on HBO Max. It is on there if you want to watch it. I recommend it. If you've seen the movie, you'll probably like it. If you did not like the movie, you probably won't like it. That's about all there is to it. If you have not seen the movie, it was on Netflix for a very long time. I honestly don't know if it still is. I think it is. I think I see it pop up in my list or whatever fairly often because I've watched it so many times. Snowpiercer is based off of a comic book, graphic novel actually. Snowpiercer was originally a French graphic novel. It was released in English for the first time around the same time that the movie came out, from Titan Comics. I have all 3 volumes that they've released now. Admittedly, I haven't finished the 3rd. I feel like I probably shouldn't be admitting that here, but there it is. The comics are not the same as anything. They're French. There's a lot of nudity. There's a lot of really weird, kind of unsettling stuff going on. They seem, with this TV show, they seem to have taken a bunch of the bones of the Snowpiercer comic and kind of reformed them into something that actually does work on TV for an American audience, for a Western audience, we'll say. French is a Western language, of course, but the comic was very much not something that Americans would really get, I want to say. It's very French. Whenever I describe it to anybody, that's what I keep finding myself coming back to. It's very French. Even in the English translation. It's hard to miss the very, very Europeanness of it all. Things that they have taken from the comic, for example, in the comic there is a second train. And we have gotten that second train in the series now. I just watched episode 1 of season 2. And things are definitely changing. It's not, I wouldn't say you could really compare this to the comic as being, you could definitely compare it as being the same story, but you can't compare it as being the exact same story, if that makes sense. They just can't do a lot of the things the comic did because it was so dark and so unsettling. For example, one of the things that they did for the movie that they took from the comic was Chris Evans' character witnesses the creation of the food gel bars that they're fed in the back of the train. In the movie, it's bugs. In the comic, it's the bodies of the dead people on the train. That's what they eat. That's where all the cannibalism stuff comes for in both the movie and the show, because they didn't really want to put it in there that much, because that was like a little bit too much, so they just reined it back a little bit and made up some cannibal rumors and gave them some bars made out of bugs instead of people. So a little bit less gross, but it's still pretty unsettling. But that's what I mean by they take things from the comic and they make it into something that works for the TV show for a Western audience. And I have to admit, I'm really into it. I'm actually finding myself wanting to reread the 2 volumes and finish the 3rd, because the show has really gotten me hooked on it. Again, I'm sad I binged the first season and now I just have 1 episode of season 2. So I gotta wait. I think there's a new episode tonight, and I gotta wait for the rest of the season, but it is what it is, and I'm glad to see that a comic book as bizarre, a graphic novel as bizarre as Snowpiercer is getting some kind of translation into pop culture and the mainstream media. And I think that just about wraps it up for my episode live from Yancy Street today. I'll have another episode up on Friday, I want to say 5th. Friday is the 5th. And I will be talking about the comics that come out tomorrow and Wednesday, the 2nd and 3rd of February. And I'll be discussing what I thought was good and bad about those, if there are bad things to discuss. Hopefully not so much. My social medias are, Instagram is at Anna with the Comics. My name is Anna, nice to meet you. My Twitter is at Savage She-Geek, because sensational was too long. My website is www.sensationalshegeek.weebly.com, because I don't pay for that. And then my podcasts, this is the 4th one up, so if you haven't listened to the other 3, give them a look-sees and give it a voting or a rate, a review. Give me something, some kind of feedback. I have no idea what people think of this unless you tell me, and I can't get better unless I get feedback, so, do the thing. And in any case, it is Monday, and I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I hope life isn't taking things too hard.